because it's really community solar the way it should be. They're using the land responsibly. They're bringing people real savings. They're not, skimming profits off the top. It's a truly member-owned cooperative. So everything that we pay in is reinvested in the community. They're being really responsible about how they advertise and what people are told. Unfortunately, some that can't be said of all community solar farms or other renewables companies.
This episode of Grounded in Maine is sponsored by ESG Review. ESG Review magazine is published quarterly in February, May, August, and November, and is available for free in print and digital formats. ESG Review is devoted to environmental, social, and governance strategies, technologies, and investments. ESGreview.net is updated every Wednesday with 8 new stories and is home to feature articles, news items, and more. Visit esgreview.net to stay informed and help us spark the collaboration and awareness needed to develop sustainable economies and communities around the world.
There's a place where there's no trouble, no more pain, no more struggle.
Grounded in Maine podcast is an open conversation about how we show up for the world. I started this podcast out of a desire to learn new ways to be sustainable because the word sustainability is big. It can be overwhelming, and I just wanted to learn, different ways to try to be part of the solution and not feel like it's too late. So I'm talking to people who are doing different things and learning so much. I hope you are too. Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy, and I have 2 guests today, and it's very exciting. So I have Seth Berry, who's the Executive Director of Our Power, and he's located in Maine, and Isabelle Winstead, who is the Policy and Communications Fellow for Our Power. And we're talking about our power, but we're also talking about a lot of things because we've been talking for a little bit now. But so Seth and Isabelle, thank you so much for being here on a Sunday morning. My goodness. And I'm really looking forward to all the things, clearing some stuff up, making some points, and just learning.
Fantastic. Amy, it's so great to be with you.
Thank you for having us.
Yay. So I want to talk about Our Power first. So can you just tell us what Our Power is all about?
Sure, I'll start. Our Power was founded in 2020, so 5 years ago. And at the time, it was becoming clear that we really needed a unified voice to hold our utilities more accountable and to help everyday Mainers to just have more voice in establishing our energy policies and protecting consumers in particular, as well as the environment. So Our Power was founded with that energy democracy mission and has taken on a number of issues in Maine, a lot of them around kind of more local and locally owned energy solutions, and a lot of them around taking on the big bullies in the room in the energy space, who are primarily the utility monopolies. They do have a monopoly. Customers of Central Maine Power and Versant Power have no choice, and making sure that they are either adequately regulated and held accountable that way, or simply replaced. And we put forward the Pine Tree Power referendum in 2023, actually starting in 2020 when we first were getting going. That didn't fly. We kind of struck out with that attempt for a grand slam. But we've been hitting a lot of singles and doubles, and are happy to talk about that today and about how the fight still goes on to give people more voice and more choice in our energy future.
Right. Well, maybe it just wasn't the right time, and you have to build some momentum, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
I think that's accurate.
On to that, utilities and energy can sort of be a black box for many people. So I think when that first came up to people, they were like, what the heck is that? So part of our purpose is Our Power is to, in addition to supporting local power and holding utilities accountable, like Seth mentioned, we're also focused on educating and engaging citizens to build awareness, energy literacy, and activism surrounding utilities and the energy transition.
And that's why we're here. This is
Woohoo!
awesome. Yeah.
Exactly.
And thank you so much for that. So why, you touched on it a little bit, but like, why is this important? And maybe why is this important right now, even?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are a couple reasons, but one of them is affordability. The economy is extremely unequal, and so many, I mean, thousands and thousands of Maine families, as well as families in other parts of the country, are just feeling incredible pressure generally to get by. And those kitchen table decisions are a big part of them. An increasing part of them is about how do we pay the electric bill. Electricity bills here in Maine have been going up twice as fast as inflation over the last 2 years. And for lower income families, it's an especially high percentage of their overall budget because, let's face it, I mean, most people have roughly the same electric bill. You could have a big home, maybe a modern home that's more efficient, or you could have an old, 1970s, single wide trailer in the woods. And like the energy bill might be very similar because, older, lower income housing tends to be less efficient. So it's just really, really hard, especially on lower income people, but also on middle income folks to get by and to pay that electricity bill. So the economy is one. And the other reasons it's important is climate change. The only way that we address the climate crisis effectively is to shift away from using fossil fuels. And guess what? Most of our fossil fuels are used in our cars and in our furnaces, right? To heat and cool our homes. Well, to heat our homes primarily.
Right.
So that's where the bulk of it is. Our electricity currently is actually pretty clean. We're working on that too. It needs to get cleaner, but shifting away from the use of gasoline to get around and the use of heating oil to heat and cool our homes, or gas in some cases. Those are the big opportunities. And you do that by helping people to electrify, to shift to an electric vehicle, or to shift to a heat pump. Those consumer choices will only happen if electricity is affordable. Mm-hmm. So we need our electricity to be clean, and we need it to be affordable. And unfortunately, the utility industry is the number one obstacle getting in the way of that. Obviously, fossil fuel companies too. So Our Power is fighting for affordability and also fighting for a transition to cleaner energy independence.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned CMP, which in Maine, everyone knows CMP, but Versant, is that like a northern Maine?
Yeah, Versant serves almost all of northern and eastern Maine. And I say almost because there are some very cool, smaller consumer-owned utilities, whether they're cooperatives or municipal utilities, public power, it's also called. Those little islands of paradise are, they kind of predate the formation of Versant Power and Central Maine Power as we know it. So they just didn't want to sell out. They had their own power company, thank you very much, and they didn't want to sell out to the big for-profit investors from away who were scooping up that lucrative industry. So anyway, we can get into that rabbit hole later, but yeah, for most Mainers, the only choice, zero consumer choice, right? It's a monopoly, is Versant Power if you live in that northern and eastern area, or for most Mainers, Central Maine Power.
Right.
Yeah, and adding on to that, I think young people in Maine and across the country are already facing the brunt of the affordability crisis and climate change realities. So I can speak as somebody from the Gen Z generation that this is an issue that is taking more of the stage in our political discourses because our utilities continue to demand risk-free 9 to 10% annual profits on their investments and simultaneously need to integrate more renewable energy. So we want our regulators and elected officials to be on notice. While we need to strengthen our electric grid, it can't come at such a high cost to the people of our state, and we need to add more clean energy into our generation portfolio.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I mean, I've had a conversation not similar to this, but just that like the I'm going to call myself older, like the older generations, we're just like, this is just how it is, right? We've had this monopoly for so long. We're like, well, what could possibly be different? But then, Isabel's generation coming, we're like, no, this does not work. And we're not putting up with it. And so I love that. I love that attitude. Like, no, it doesn't have to be like this. We've seen that there are other ways. Other people are doing it. And so, Seth, thank you so much for taking this on, because it's so important. Like right now, I've heard rumblings of like CMP upgrading things and spreading. I don't even know. Like I don't take all the information in, but just there's so many upgrades happening. But who's going to be paying for that? And is the service really going to be better? That's what I lost power in the middle of summer a million times with CMP, and why? And I'm still paying for that electricity. It was crazy pants.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy, were you here? Were you here during the
Yes.
2017 windstorm, October 31st? There was a pretty good sized windstorm that took power out in the Brunswick area for
7 days.
a couple weeks.
Yeah. We were without power for 7 days. I lost all the vegetables that I didn't want to can because it was too hot, and I put them in the freezer.
Yep.
Everything was lost.
My children's schools were closed for 2 weeks. Schools in other school districts were also closed for that long. And at the same time, at that exact same moment, CMP began to have extraordinary, unprecedented billing inaccuracies, and they sent hundreds of thousands of erroneous bills to customers over the course of the next several months. And then they covered it up. They told the regulators, oh, nothing to see here. They were parading around at utility conferences saying how great their new billing system was.
I got like 3 bills in a month.
Meanwhile, they were covering it up. There you go, 3 bills in a month. Like, there's supposed to be one, right? Like, I mean, how hard could this be? But it was around that time that I and hundreds of others decided to organize consumer groups, environmental groups, senior citizens, just young and old, to take back our power and to put forward a proposition that we should replace a utility if it can't do its basic job, which is, again, in return for a monopoly and guaranteed profits, all you got to do is like keep the power on and keep the bills reasonable, right? So they clearly weren't doing that. They were covering up their shenanigans and their billing inaccuracies. We did ultimately come out of that with about a $10 million penalty to the company that was imposed by the regulators.
That they didn't even feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's a slap on the wrist. We also cost them $37 million though, because they had to run around, spending money on misinformation against the Pine Tree Power campaign. So when we put forward that referendum to replace them, it really forced them to spend some money there. And by the way, it also cost them $8 billion. They were working on a big acquisition in New Mexico. And the New Mexico regulators looked at the poor job they were doing in Maine. I was asked to come and speak to the regulators. Ooh. And the regulators there ended up saying, no, you can't have this $8 billion merger. We're not letting you into the country. They're speaking to the owner of Central Maine Power, which is called Avangrid at the time. So it certainly cost them, and I think they've learned some lessons. Number one, the people of Maine should not be taken for granted and should not be treated as fools. We're ready to stand up for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that was like
I remember back.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me, taking our power back literally and then also metaphorically.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really difficult period because we had lost so much, food, work, everything. The people lost that, and it was an upgrade in billing that happened at that point. Yeah, because I remember it was the worst possible time. Like that was October, and that was not the worst possible time. But like when that billing started coming in all crazy, I had just lost my dog, and I was a mess. And I was like, oh no, this is the third time. Like I know I'm a mess, but I've had way too many CMP bills, and I would like look through I was keeping the paper bills at that point. I still have them. I kept them all. Every bill that came in, I'm like, this is 2 weeks ago. This is 1 week ago. Like, what is this? And I had to call a million times, and they were like, that's just what you're using. I'm like, it's absolutely. I have solar power. I'm not using all this.
It's a pretty messed up system that we have, and it goes back to some Supreme Court cases 100 years ago. But utilities get paid for investing in, for buying new stuff. Basically, they love to buy new stuff because it's where they make the most of their money under this Supreme Court jurisprudence. And so that new billing system that you mentioned was very expensive, and we are still paying for it, even though it produced all these errors. So it's a good example of how the utilities, it's not even their fault at this point. Like it is what it is. Their incentive is to invest in new stuff, and usually the wrong stuff. And so we need regulators to hold them in check, and that's where the recent rate case comes in.
Right. Yeah, the accountability is really key.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to have a monopoly, they just need someone to hold them accountable, but there has been none of that. And there was like no fighting. I was like, I'm not paying these 3 bills that came in 1 month. I'll pay one, but I'm not. No, you got to get that right. And I was just one person, So that I'm so glad, Seth, that you took action on that. And whether you won or not that first the first fight, but you didn't give up, and you just had a big win this past week.
We did.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Isabelle, do you want to lead on that one?
Yeah, so it was an unprecedented victory. I don't believe the commission has never dismissed a proposal like that outright before. And what the proposal was, just for some context, was that CMP asked for a extremely large increase. And for the average household bill over the next, or for the course of the multi-year rate case, that was looking like an increase of $420 per year. And so we organized in coalition with a couple of other great groups like Maine Youth for Climate Justice, Sierra Club Maine, Maine Climate Action. Gosh, I think there was over 7 or 8 of us working in coalition.
Over a dozen. We're a dozen. Plus others who aren't formally part of it.
Join forces.
Yeah. Ratepayers Unite, and we all sort of worked together to quote unquote fight the hike. We had some rallies. We really drove people to leave public comments for the Maine Public Utilities Commission, and even come in person to testify to the commissioners and tell them how this is going to affect them and why it was not okay. And I think our public participation in that rate case really worked because, they cited it multiple times in their reason for why the case was dismissed. And then it was dismissed, which doesn't mean that CMP won't file another rate case in the future, but certainly
someone told them no for once.
Yeah, and I think when they come forth with their next rate case, they'll sort of have that in mind and hopefully be a little bit more fair about the profits that they're asking for and the type of investment that they want. So I consider it a win.
Yeah. I think that all of Maine should consider that a win. I mean, that's like, when everyone talks, everyone, people are heard, and that, they're not like, well, nothing can be done. This is us. We're running the place. But then the people said no.
Exactly. Yeah. And it really, I mean, Isabelle said it already, but it bears repeating. This is unprecedented. There has never been an outright denial of a utility's request for a rate hike. They've moderated it, right? They've said, well, we're going to give you a little less and we're going to impose some requirements. And that's typically what happens. Like the utilities will come in and ask for an absolutely ridiculous sum of money to do, very little. And then, other interveners will get involved in the case. Usually these rate cases take about a year. Most people have no idea what's going on. Like it's lawyer speak, right? Everybody's speaking in technical language and jargon. But others do come in, usually the big, industrial users of energy, like factories, paper mills, will get involved. We do have a public advocate whose job is to represent the public, but they're a very small, understaffed office. And so all these different participants in the case will kind of come in and say, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't spend you can't spend so much money. The regulators will kind of listen to everybody, and then they compromise. And so the utilities get something that's not as ridiculous, but it's still ridiculous. They have too much money for too little work.
Yeah.
The regulators can say, well, we made it better, which is true, I guess. But still the people who get screwed are the folks who are not in the room, the folks who don't even understand that this is happening, much less how to get involved. And that's how the game is played. They ask for twice as much as they think they're going to get, and they end up getting what they've always gotten, which is too much. And our bills keep going up at twice the rate of inflation. So it's really inspiring that this week our regulator said no. Our regulator said, you're asking too much. We're going to send you back to the drawing board. Come back to us when you have a better idea. And by the way, don't come back to us for at least 9 months. There's a grid plan they're supposed to do. So they said, finish your grid plan first. So that's huge. That is a really unprecedented moment. And it's, I think, a historic turning point with respect to utility regulation in Maine.
Yeah, and how we organize around it. Because what was really inspiring to me was that we saw groups from all sorts of backgrounds come and unify around this cause. People had reasons for environmental protection reasons, equity and social justice reasons, and economic development reasons. So I think that this is sort of a point for us all to come together and move forward towards progress sort of in a united way, instead of looking at these issues as completely siloed and separate from one another.
Wow. I mean, I think I think this is just a really important moment in time. And I am so grateful, Seth, that you and other people that are doing things that you're doing. I think that there are so many political things that people just don't understand. And if somebody is not going to, translate for them what it actually means, they're just like, I don't, this is just what happens. And I just have to somehow come up with extra money. I have to get a third job, or I have to sell my stuff, or whatever, and it doesn't have to be the case. We just don't know how to fight it, what's necessary.
Yeah. And sometimes with these revenue increases, the numbers are too big to fathom. Just to walk you through some of them, the total increase in CMP profits was going to increase their current revenue and improved rates by 144% from what they are right now over the course of the next 5 years. And it was going to equate to a total of $492 million more in revenue increases, which is extremely high when you're thinking about their profits. And that would have just, I think, equated to $1.7 billion of more.
That's on top of
needing to be spent by the ratepayers. And then $492 million of that was just for their profits, which I think, those numbers are just so big. It's hard for us as individuals to fathom the difference between, $492 million and $493 million, but that $1 million is a lot of money, and that can be used towards more climate investment, or sort of economic development in our local economy. And it's just really important to keep our eye on the ball of how much profit they're taking, and really be skeptical of how much they're actually giving back to our communities.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And I mean, even with all that extra income, that's not going in the people that are doing the physical work. That's just going to a few people. It's just not right.
Most of it, I will say that, part of their proposal was to hire some additional workers to do some work on the grid. And honestly, in fairness, some of that work needs to be done. So it's not totally black and white.
Right.
There are shades of gray here, but I do think that it's clear, and regulators agreed with us that they were asking for way too much for way too little, actual progress towards improving reliability and resilience of the grid. And we need both. We need investment in the grid, but we also need the bills to be affordable, right? So it really matters, how much profit are you baking in? How much are you skimming from that electricity budget that, households have, the businesses have?
Right. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then what are some solutions to this? How do we, I mean, I know that you've you kind of stop them for a moment for 9 months. But what happens next? Like, how does that get fixed? And then is this could totally be a template for other states that are also suffering from this.
Yeah. You know, affordability has become a huge issue in elections. The recent elections just earlier this month in other states like Virginia and New Jersey really hinged largely on affordability issues, and electricity was at the top of that list of affordability issues. Not the only issue, but one of those top of mind issues. Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey has promised to freeze electricity bills, and it's going to be really interesting to see how she does that, because utilities will not take that lightly, and they'll take her to court. It's going to be interesting to see how the governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, moves forward. And I think this issue will continue to percolate, and it will be very big in the upcoming 2026 midterms, where control of Congress is at stake. So that's one area where, you know, we're quickly moving into an election year where a lot of governor seats, including Maine's, are also up for you know, an election. And so certainly looking ahead, the political moment is going to be really ripe for these kinds of conversations to happen, and for progress to be made, for people to get educated and informed in a way that maybe they haven't. And also the utilities and the big utilities and the big fossil fuel companies will be trying to play in those elections and get their point of view out. So it's an incredibly important moment in that respect. And we can also talk about the utility space and the regulatory space and how we move forward there if you want. We can also talk about what consumers can do, because we have political voice, but we also have consumer choice.
Oh, heck yeah.
So we can talk about those things if you want.
Yes, please.
All right, that's great. I'll just say briefly on the regulatory side, you know, this denial by the Public Utilities Commission is unprecedented. It's wonderful news, but it's not the end of the road. Now there will be a participatory process where the utilities are required to say how they plan to spend money to invest the grid and to improve the grid and to make the grid better. That plan will have to be approved. So that's a process which is going to be happening at the Public Utilities Commission, and smarter people than I will be at the table and working hard on that really important grid planning process. Once that plan's in place, the utilities will then come forward with another rate hike request, CMP in particular, because they recently got a rate hike. So CMP will come forward and ask for a rate hike, and hopefully it'll be more reasonable, and we will then take like the next year adjudicating that case, and the regulators will hopefully make another good decision, maybe to give them a little bit, because again, we need to invest in the grid, but not to give them a lot, because Maine people can't afford it.
Right.
So that's the regulatory space, and I'd love to later, maybe we can talk about consumer choice.
Oh, heck yeah. I remember before I moved, there was a Brunswick, where I lived, did a sustainability workshop, or it was a series, and I think I only made the first, maybe I made the first two. But the first one, I remember they had these huge, Ashley Charlson organized it, and we chatted a lot. But like huge notepads all around the room with different topics, and and they were like, what's the issue here, and how do you feel about this? And I was just looking at all the notes, and I could see there were so many people that are, they're like, do you think that we should invest in solar panels, and do you think we should invest in electric vehicles? And and people were like, yeah, I would love that, but I can't afford food. Like, I can't pay my own bills right now. And so people feel so stuck, in that period. That was 2023, I think, early 24, maybe it was January 24. But it was like, yeah, we want all these things, but we can't afford life as it is. So like, how, and this is for the town of Brunswick, not like any political anything, but and I didn't actually get to go to the third one and get to really hear a lot about how it all worked out and what the plan was going forward, because I had to move. But it was really eye-opening to me. And I've felt the same thing. Like I have a million ideas. And that's part of the purpose of the podcast. Like we feel like we want to be a part of this, but there are so many things that are so big and so expensive and they feel out of range. And so we just have to do what we can do and,
Mhm.
to empower people to find those things. And so, I've been doing this for 3.5 years now. And, all these people are talking about these cool things that they're doing. One of my friends came on and she was like, I make my own broth. And that's like, it seems like such a small thing, but at the same time, like you're not investing in packaging, you're not investing in chemicals and
Mhm.
preservatives and stuff like that. Like exactly what you're getting, and it literally is just scraps. So it costs you nothing. So I think that's I think things like that are very exciting to see people take hold of. And so this is another one of those things. Like I feel like education on what our options are and
Mhm.
how we can fight it. I think this is a really big conversation and maybe more than just one little interview.
Yeah, I'm sure we could spend a whole other podcast on just like what people can do individually. But and I'm a big fan of the sustainability conversation. I grew up with parents who were very much back to the landers, inspired by Scott and Helen Nearing. We raised our vegetables, we had animals, we we
Oh, I've
cut our
heard
own
about your
firewood.
vegetables.
What's that?
I've heard about your vegetables.
They're famous, right? Some of my father has farmed, both of my parents have farmed all kinds of things, including not just mixed vegetables, but things like oysters and native perennials. And, we've used composting toilets. I mean, I could go on. We've lived in tiny homes. But so I'm very steeped in that conversation. I think it's a really important thing for people to feel empowered and to feel that their choices do matter, because the fact is they do. It all starts with us. And the cool thing about our energy is that the cheapest and the cleanest energy is the energy that we don't use. So I can talk all day long about solar and wind and, hydro and other forms of generation and supply and, what it costs and all of that. But if you simply don't use it, A, you're saving more money, and B, you're doing more to save the environment. So, I don't want people to freeze in the winter or that kind of not using
Right.
energy, but certainly, as the old ads, the public service announcements have said to us, or, President Carter in the 70s wore a sweater when he, gave a White House address and said, hey, everybody, wear a sweater. Like, turn your thermostat down a little bit in the winter. Those kinds of things really do matter. And it's like some of the easiest ways to save money. Having said that, not everybody can. So there are some really cool tips and tricks available at efficiencymaine.com. And I really strongly encourage people to think about efficiency as well. So there's two ways to save, to not use energy. One is conservation, like you turn the thermostat down, right? Or you don't use the power. The other is efficiency, where you might, the next time you need to replace your dishwasher, get a more, efficient model. Or change a light bulb from the old-fashioned light bulbs to LED. Those kinds of choices are called what we call efficiency. And there's some really simple things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money. There are also things that might cost a little more upfront, like that new dishwasher I mentioned. But all of that is laid out at efficiencymaine.com, and I really encourage people to go there and think about what you can do now and also over the long term to save money.
That's an awesome suggestion. I appreciate that a lot. And you don't have to live in Maine to go to efficiencymaine.com
That's right.
and get
And
some good tips.
perhaps this is a good time also to plug Maine Community Power Cooperative.
Oh,
This is only for people who are in CMP or Central Maine Power territory, but they can switch their generation to Maine Community Power Cooperative and immediately save between 10 to 20% on their bills without having to install solar on their homes. They can take advantage of the cleaner and greener power that MCPC is owning and operating. And just switch over their bills. They still get one bill from CMP, but there's going to be a deduction on their total bill just because they're procuring all of their electricity generation from Maine Community Power Cooperative's solar projects,
Mm.
which is pretty cool.
We are so excited about Maine Community Power. I mean, I'm just over the moon about the opportunity that presents for Central Maine Power customers. And I hope that other areas of the country will also do this, because it's really community solar the way it should be. They're using the land responsibly. They're bringing people real savings. They're not, skimming profits off the top. It's a truly member-owned cooperative. So everything that we pay in is reinvested in the community. They're being really responsible about how they advertise and what people are told. Unfortunately, that can't be said of all community solar farms or other renewables companies. So it's just a really perfect example of the right kind of renewables investment and opportunity, as Isabelle said, for people to save money.
Right. And so how does that work exactly? I mean, so I know that I had talked to Maine Community Solar a couple of years ago, and it's literally like you fill out an application, they add you to the thing, and then you start to see benefits, and it doesn't cost anything. Is it the same with MCPC? See, that's why I didn't want to say it.
Yeah. MCPC, or Maine Community Power Cooperative. By the way, if you are currently a CMP customer, switching to, all you need to do is switch 2 letters, in the order of the letters, right? You're supposed to switch from CMP to MCP. But why do you do that? So, and how does it work is your question.
Yes.
And it is different from the Maine Community Solar and the other for-profit companies that have been investing in community solar. By the way, that started in 2019. I was the House chair as a legislator. I was the House chair of the Energy, Utilities, and Technology Committee. We rewrote the law to make it more profitable and affordable for companies to provide these community solar options to people.
Awesome.
So I'm very familiar with the landscape, having passed that bill. And frankly, I think we made some mistakes. It wasn't a perfect bill. The good news is that it opened up a lot of opportunity for investment. We have seen a lot of renewable energy come online, and people are getting savings as a result of that. The bad news is that some of these companies, some of these new community solar farms have been a little bit slick or even shady sometimes with their advertising methods or what they're telling customers. And so they're kind of like cutting some corners to improve their own profits, but in ways that are not realizing the full potential of the legislation that we passed to save people money and to save the environment. So what do I mean by that?
Yes.
Very specifically, Maine Community Power Cooperative, unlike the others, is not selling renewable energy credits. So if I sign up with actually most of the community solar farms in Maine right now, I think I'm getting clean power, right? I think I'm getting solar energy.
Right.
In fact, I'm probably not. The reason for that is that many of these community solar providers are selling the renewable energy credits to someone else. And the way that our energy system works, it's all based on sort of accounting for every kilowatt hour. How is that kilowatt hour produced? And you have to be able to count the renewability of that kilowatt hour in order to count, are we clean? Are we how clean are we? Are we at 79%? Are we at 83%? We're working to get to 100%, by the way. Like the whole state should be 100% clean energy by 2040. But you need to be able to count every kilowatt hour. If my solar farm is selling the renewable energy credit to someone else, like maybe they're selling it to the Bank of America, so Bank of America can say that they're clean, right? Great, good for Bank of America, good for the company because they're getting some money from it.
Who's paying for that?
Bank of America is paying, but the point here is that I thought I was getting solar power.
Right.
But yes, I got a kilowatt hour credit and that's great, but they sold the renewability to somebody else. They sold the renewability to Bank of America. So now what I got was a dirty kilowatt hour. That had to be backfilled by natural gas or oil, generation somewhere else on the grid. So it what it does is it actually dilutes our efforts to get to clean energy, and it causes backward progress in that regard.
Oh.
So we need to fix that. We need to the law needs to change to say you are not allowed to, if you tell someone they're getting solar energy, you are not allowed to then sell the solar part of it to somebody else. That's just a basic reform that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Maine Community Power Cooperative is different. It does not sell the renewable energy credit. So when you're getting a kilowatt hour from MCPC, you are getting clean energy. That's number one. Another thing that they do is they give you one bill instead of two. What do I mean by that? If you sign up for a community solar provider in Maine, the vast majority of them will give you their own bill, and you still get a Central Maine Power bill.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very confusing. It sometimes leads to actually more costs for consumers because they may not realize, for example, that the solar farm is producing more than they're using. And so credits are expiring and they're paying for credits that they never got to use. It's just really hard to see if there's an error. Like if either company, we talked about CMP's billing errors, right? If CMP makes a mistake or the solar farm makes a mistake and bills them improperly, getting two bills, it's just really hard to see what's going on. Maine Community Power Cooperative gives you one bill. They take over the billing function from CMP. That's more work for them. There's a lot of reconciliation that has to happen, but they're taking on that complexity for you and simplifying it so you really see what's happening. So A, they're giving you truly renewable energy. B, they're giving you one bill. And you're just having one bill instead of two. And C, you get real savings. If you're low to moderate income, and many of us are moderate income, including many people who serve in the legislature, school teachers, moderate income is not a high bar to meet. Low to moderate income, you get 20% off your bill. And it's the whole bill, 20% off the whole bill. So it's a really phenomenal opportunity for the vast majority of people in CMP's service territory. And I cannot for the life of me understand why thousands of people haven't signed up yet. Hundreds of people have, but many more people should be signing up. There should be lines around the block, around the rural block to sign up for MCPC. It's really phenomenal in terms of the savings.
Well, thanks for that, Seth. I mean, that's very that's a real education. I mean, I think that along with so many things that there's so much education that needs to happen, and people don't know what is out there and what's, there are so many different ways to do everything. And so I feel like, people might say solar farms are solar farms, right? Like as long as I invest in one that, the one that approaches me or the one that's nearby or whatever. But so what's the process to join MCPC?
Yeah. So I'd encourage people to go to ourpowermaine.org, and there's a link under the resources tab to the Maine Community Power Cooperative, and we explain what it is, how it works. We're very proud to be promoting this, but we're nonprofit, and MCPC is a member-owned cooperative. By the way, you get to vote in the governance, so once you're a member, you're actually helping to steer the ship, so to speak. But all of the great points about MCPC are outlined there at ourpowermaine.org under resources, and there's a link to join. We do strongly encourage people to mention that they were referred by Our Power. We're trying to track our efforts, but only for our own, nonprofits reporting and back to our funders on, are we being effective? We just feel really passionately that this is the right thing to do for consumers, first of all, and secondly, for the environment.
Right. Okay. All right. So ourpowermaine.org, and then, and sign up for MCPC and let them know that you found them through Our Power. Okay. And so the process is an application, I assume. And so I like that member owned gives you the option or the opportunity to say, I don't like that, or more of that, please. I think it's not a newer thing, but it's right now it feels very powerful. as we feel like we are losing power in a lot of things. So just having a say and being able to use that is that's big.
Such a great point. Yeah. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. I think people understandably feel really disempowered, not just in the energy space, but in so many aspects of our lives. And it's really wonderful to see this opportunity to actually participate in the governance,
True.
By the way, let's contrast that just for a minute. Like, let's think about what the difference. So Central Maine Power is a utility in Maine that has a monopoly, right, over most of the state. And it's owned by a U.S. holding company called Avangrid. Avangrid is owned by a multinational, second biggest electricity corporation in the world.
Sounds about
called
right.
Avangrid. Called Iberdrola. And Iberdrola is based in Spain, but they have investors from all over. Their biggest investor is the nation of Qatar, which has invested its oil wealth in Iberdrola. And BlackRock is the second biggest investor. These are just massive multinational corporations. We're like a tiny, drop in their bucket. They don't care about us except for how much, can they bring in each year. And we certainly don't get a say in their governance. Like, those decisions that impact us are being made in the top of a skyscraper in Spain.
Right.
By people from all over the world who, have more money than we can even dream of. And so, and want more from us, by the way. So, like, that's the governance that we have with CMP. With Maine Community Power Cooperative is like people from your from Maine, from your part of Maine, who are making decisions as part of the board of the Maine Community Power Cooperative, and you get to elect them. You get to vote, once a year on who's going to be on that board. So it's just a complete. You can attend the board meetings. You can participate. You can run for the board if you want. It is so different in terms of governance and decision making.
So local. And so to that point, Seth, I would like to see if there are. I assume that there are organizations in at least most of the states, so that this could be sort of a template. Like, you can fight back. There is an option. You're not stuck. Because I know, I mean, I'm in Virginia right now, and I'm hearing from people like, oh my gosh, my electric bill is going to go up again. Like, every month I hear all these complaints, and I'm just like,
Right.
But they feel completely stuck, and I'm sure that it's the same in most states. So is there an organization, or I mean, Our Power, is that in every state?
No, the short answer is no. But there are efforts like ours and like Maine Community Power Cooperative in other states. I think the ecosystem in each state is a little different. There are some states where there's very little consumer choice. The utilities really dominate the conversation and dominate policies and laws. In most states, net energy billing is still possible. And if you can afford even a small solar panel, then it's generally a great opportunity for you to save some money and like take back a little control over your life and your money. But honestly, the Maine Community Power Cooperative is pretty novel, and it's just getting started. And I do hope that in other states, they'll find ways to replicate this. You need a little seed money to get it going. And MCPC was funded by a Biden administration grant. That's where they got the seed money. I don't think that will be as easy for others. Obviously, there's, no more money flowing from the Biden administration right now. So, and Trump is pulling out, resources from these kinds of efforts, around the country. So it's not easy, but I do think that there are creative, resourceful people who are working along these same lines in other areas. And you just kind of have to look around and dig around until you can figure out like who's really moving forward local self-reliance and locally controlled clean energy solutions in your area.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Do you have an idea how people can find those people?
Yeah, right. I mean, we're happy that, people should absolutely reach out to us, ourpowermaine.org. We are connected to a whole network of wonderful organizations in different parts of the country. And, we may not have the answer off the top of our heads, but we can certainly connect you to people who would.
Oh, okay. That's really great. So if you're in a different state in the US, you can still contact Our Power Maine and ask for suggestions.
Absolutely.
Or if you have
Ourpowermaine.org. Yeah. Reach out to us.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's super helpful. And that just shows the dedication that you have to the cause, and I appreciate that a whole lot. All right. Well, I mean, this is super helpful for me, at least. I feel like I've learned a lot about the opportunity to take power back and to have a say. And I think, and also the education. I'd like, one of the things that keeps coming up for me is transparency. Like the language that's being used a lot is not something that everyone understands. And so they might just feel like, they're saying this is what's best, and that's what's best. But so, and educating yourself is not always easy. Like, we don't know the particular areas. And so I'm so glad that you've done a lot of the research and that you're educating people and demanding transparency from the utility companies. I think that's really important.
Amy, if I may, there's one kind of thought I want to share as we wrap up, and that's based on my own experience recently, where my father was approached by a number of community solar investors to use an old sheep pasture that's been in the family for a long time. We haven't been using it. We pay to have it mowed every year, but it really hasn't been productive farmland for a long time. And he was approached to use his farm field in Bowdenham, Maine, for community solar. And he was offered some money, annually in return for that. I think initially it was, hey, for that few acres, could we, give you a couple thousand a year and have a 40-year lease? He said, he really thought about it. He was very tempted. He said no to the first few people. Recently, he was approached by the Maine Community Power Cooperative. And long story short, he was offered a better deal and he said yes. And he's super excited. My father is turning 86 in January. He has been dedicated, as I mentioned, to the land and the environment and environmental protection for his whole life. He's very interested in topics of sustainability and local self-reliance and strengthening communities. And he is super excited about this opportunity because it allows him to actually not only be producing power for 100 homes on his farm field, but also to actually make that farm field a farm field again, to have manure spread. I mean, it's going to cost him $5,000 just to have manure spread on that field to bring back the productivity of it, to have it plowed and reseeded so it's not just growing invasive weeds, to pay for a fence to be put up so it can be grazed by the local sheep farmer who's trying to bring back more local sheep farming. These are things that can happen because of solar, not in spite of solar. So a lot of people have the wrong idea. They believe that by putting up solar on land, that you're somehow taking away that land from productive uses. Yes, that can be the case, that in certain circumstances, the wrong kind of solar, that can happen. Like a fixed arrays on really productive soil would probably not be a good idea. But in many cases, you can farm underneath the panels and you can bring back land into production that before it just doesn't, like, the economics weren't there. The reason we're losing so many farms in America is not because of solar farms. It's because the economics are not there. Farmers can't make it. Mm-hmm. And this was happening, it's been happening for 100 years. It was happening long before solar farms came along. So solar's not the cause of the loss of farmland. And in fact, it's an opportunity to bring it back. And yes, there are, some solar farms that are better than others, and it's important to do your homework. But I think my father's experience is a good example of how you can actually bring back farming because of solar farming and do both things better.
Yeah, I think it's very hard to stay cost competitive as a local farmer when you have just a smaller plot and you're producing less. So you have less sort of economies of scale when you're competing against these massive businesses like Walmart that have just supply chains that reach all across the country and all across the planet. So having these solar farms integrated with local farming provides an awesome additional source of revenue to help these small farms stay abreast and continue to increase food sovereignty in the community and in the area.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I love that the income from the solar panels um, allows you to invest in your property. I think that's incredible.
And increase productivity because, like Seth was describing with his father's case, like they weren't using that land because the soil perhaps was just a little funky and wasn't as fertile as what they would have focused on with their larger farming strategy. So this can be a way to both add productivity, add extra revenue streams, and really support farming instead of, like Seth was describing, hamper it.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and I think in just going back to the affordability point, because that's where we really need to begin and end this conversation. I think there are people who can afford rooftop solar, and making that initial investment will save them money, and that's great. There are businesses who can put up solar on their, Walmart roof or parking lot. That's great also. But where does that leave the lower income person who doesn't have the ability to borrow several $1,000s for a significant, solar set of solar panels, or maybe doesn't have a building of their own, or a building that's adequate for that kind of investment? So community solar is an opportunity to provide the same thing that I have on my roof. I have rooftop solar and I'm very fortunate to have it, but it's an opportunity to bring that benefit to other people who otherwise are left out, completely left out of the transition.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think a theme we focus on is that affordability is climate policy. And I'm not going to elaborate on that. That could be elaborated on for a very long time, but just if you take nothing away from this podcast, I want you to think that affordability is climate policy, and that's going to be the future of the energy transition in the next couple decades to come.
Perfect.
That's so good. Yeah. All right. Well, Seth and Isabelle, thank you so much for being here. I do have a couple of questions that I always end with. And I mean, the first one the second one you've already brought up, but ourpowermaine.org. It's ME though, right?
No, it's actually Maine spelled out. MAINE.
Okay.
Spelled out. Yeah, our name is just Our Power, but we had to add Maine in there because it's where we are, and the URL for Our Power was already taken.
Got it. Okay.
I think it's a popular name, Our Power. I think that can be used in a lot of different, but I think our use of it is the best because we're literally talking about power and electricity and also people power. So
yes,
if the owner of the Our Power URL is out there listening to this podcast, please hit us up.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And you're also on Instagram, at least. That's how I found you.
Our Instagram is just Our Power ME, not Maine spelled out.
That's what I was thinking of. Right. Okay. And they are very active on Instagram. Just saying.
That's right.
And Isabelle's really fast with the socials. And are you elsewhere? Like on
Yes, we're on Facebook. Look up
LinkedIn.
Our Power on Facebook. I think that's Our Power Maine also. And LinkedIn.
Okay.
We are not on X because we're not really thrilled about that platform right now.
Same.
Thinking about maybe Blue Sky.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. And so the other question that I always ask is, what does the word sustainability mean to you guys? It's a big question, but just personally.
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in if you want, Isabelle, if you want to think about it. To me, sustainability is it is about the planet, but it's also about affordability, because in order to sustain things, in order to keep them going, I mean, to sustain means to keep it going, right? And I love the saying that comes from a Native American tribe, and I'm going to forget which one, a Native American leader. So we need to think about the seventh generation, right? Our decisions today should be made with, 7 generations from now in mind. And I think that it's that kind of thinking, it's that kind of, generational scale sustaining that to me the word encapsulates. But it isn't just the environment. It's also like, will this sustain itself? Will we be able to keep it up? If I run too fast when I go out for a run, and I'm not a big runner, but when I go out for a run, like if I run too fast, like I'm gonna spend myself. I'm gonna, I'll use it up and exhaust myself. So how do we rather sustain this work together and make sure that it won't be, battered by the winds of change or blown back, that it's strong and resilient enough to continue. And a big part of that is affordability. Too often, I think people jump on a bandwagon and it becomes like, the stock market where there's a big, there's big excitement and, something's fashionable for a hot moment and then it kind of goes away. Maybe there's overinvestment, too much speculation, and then, boom, like, it's gone. And what we're left with is like resentment. And that can happen in policy. It can happen in economics. And it certainly can happen with respect to new environmental trends as well. So we need the work to be built really thoughtfully and planfully and carefully so that we have a strong foundation and we can build a more sustainable house that lasts. And affordability is a big part of that.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah.
I love the idea of thinking 7 generations ahead. Like not just, I want to live longer, but like I want my great grand people to be healthy as well.
For me, it's also important to recognize we don't even really need to be thinking 7 generations in the future. Like the effects of climate change and global warming are happening today. Earth's temperature has already risen by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, which is over 1 degree Celsius. We're blowing past the warming limits set out around 1.5 degrees Celsius. Heat waves are becoming more common. Sea level rise is already happening. The global average sea level has already risen by about 8 inches. We're losing ice on the Arctic and Antarctic plains, and the ocean is rapidly acidifying. I know I see that every day as a scuba diver, and people are being displaced. There's some statistics that say that the economic losses from climate change and global warming are just ridiculously high every year, and they're projected to be around 310 to 365 billion per year by 2030. So I think we're already living the effects of global warming and the climate crisis. And, I can only imagine what it's going to be like 7 generations from now, but we need to start also acting for our own survival today, which I think brings me back to my simple yet extremely almost, it seems dramatic as my answer for what sustainability means to me. But sustainability to me means survival, because I think it really is an existential threat, global warming, and also, whether or not we can pay for our livelihoods and eat our food and continue living in a way that is thriving and not just surviving. So
right.
Yeah.
Yep. I hear that. I mean, it's not, I can totally appreciate, and especially, Seth, where your dad ingrained this in you because this has been his thinking. And I think that's beautiful. And Isabelle, also, like, we can't wait for someone else to take care of it. Like it's not ahead of us. It's here now. And so, not to put it off.
Yeah, but simultaneously, a lot of the technological solutions are also here right now. So it's just a matter of getting our politics in order and taking local action and encouraging global action at the same time. Like there's this phrase where it's like, act locally, think globally. I think that's also what sustainability means to me in my everyday practice of life.
Yep.
And when you're acting locally, you are, in a sense, contributing to the larger sustenance and sustainability of the entire planet.
Right. And to that, I would say, community solar is really important because it is acting locally and also being part of the solution. So, but taking care of the community itself. Beautiful, you guys. Thank you so
100%.
much. I so appreciate your all of this education that you've brought, and the passion. Like I can feel that. I mean, it's not. This is something that you live and breathe, and yeah. um, and I so appreciate that you guys are working so hard for Mainers and people everywhere to have better energy, better feelings around energy, more control, and more transparency. I think that's so important.
It's really fun work to do. You run into a lot of great people like yourself, Amy, and your listeners, and I think that's a big part of what sustains me in the work is just the community that has formed around the sustainability work, and
True
it's
story.
fun.
Okay. So Our Power Maine spelled out.org, you guys check that out. Get any suggestions about your area, or if you're in Maine, I would definitely check out MCPC, Maine Community Power Cooperative. And so I hope that you found this information helpful and empowering. And please just, do what you can to be educated about the power situation where you are.
I just want to take a second to thank my guest again for speaking with me and sharing such great information. I love having these conversations with folks. I also want to thank Buzzsprout for hosting the podcast, for Jane Bolduck and her music genius, for Becca Coffron and her award-winning artwork. And thank you for listening. I appreciate that so much. Please check out the show notes for any links and extra information. And if you would like to follow my guest and find out more about them, I'm sure they would love the follow. And if you don't mind leaving a rating or review wherever you're listening, and just help to get this podcast in front of new eyes, that would be amazing. I would really love that. And feel free to reach out to me on the socials and let me know what you're thinking. And if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please let me know that. I would love to have a conversation with you about sustainability. All right. Thank you again. I hope you have a great rest of the week.
There'll come a day, my mama told me, when I find love to have and hold me, a heart that's strong and so sincere. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? Oh, tell me, get there from here, 'cause here and now I'm so far down that mercy's bound to find me. We'll find a way to soothe the sickness, we'll heal the aches with sweet forgiveness. Wages of war will disappear. Just tell me, how do I get there from here? I wonder, how do I get there from here? Yeah, 'cause here and now I'm so far down, and mercy's bound to find me. When that state of grace has has finally found me, well, there'll be music, ooh, and good friends around me, yeah, yeah. And I'll just smile through happy tears.